Karen, just to be clear, you didn't do it.
We know who did it, Steve. We know. And we know who spearheaded this cover-up. You all know.
Yes, we do.
If John was beaten up and attacked in that house, who did it?
We don't know.
We don't know.
We don't know. And it's not for us to know. Somebody other than Karen is responsible for that, for the killing of John.
You are listening to the Roberta Glass True Crime Report, putting the true back in true crime. From New York City, Roberta Glass is now on the record.
Okay, how is everybody? Hello, Jennifer Ray. Hello, Lazy Susan. Hello, Marianne. Hello, Macy. Hello, Amy Celeste. I want to wish a very happy birthday to my fantastic moderator here, Maestro. I hope it's a wonderful day and a great year ahead. Thanks to everybody who showed up on Kick last night. We had a good time watching the first 2 episodes. I may be on there tonight watching the third and fourth episodes. No, wait. Is that how it goes? Are they just doing one tonight? I can't remember. But I'll be on there. It is what started out as an innocence fraud documentary, and I still think it is. I don't think you can embed yourself in the defense without being terribly, 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 terribly biased. I mean, I don't even know if biased is the word. I don't think you can really see the story correctly when you're following one side so deeply. This is something that I honed in on. When I heard they embedded themselves in the defense, I said, oh, it's like The Staircase. And lo and behold, according to the producer, her 2 favorite documentaries are The Staircase and the Paradise Lost series, both innocence fraud documentaries, meant to leave the majority of the really important evidence against the ultimately convicted in both those documentaries. They were all 4 of them. So 3 of the West Memphis 3 defendants and Michael Peterson were all convicted. But we're supposed to think it's a massive, massive injustice. And eventually the Paradise Lost documentaries are what got the West Memphis 3 out. So it was started as it is intended, I think, originally to be an innocence fraud documentary. It still is. But Karen Read came off so badly in it that you can only think that this is the beginning of the end. Every time she opens her mouth, it's more terrible for her and awful. She comes off as a angry, unpleasant woman, determined to point the finger at anyone else but herself. At one point, she says, either Jen McCabe, and this is not a direct quote, it's to this effect, either Jen McCabe was going down or I was going down. Either I was going down or Jen McCabe is going down. So, and you see the difference when she got that second degree charge. They thought that maybe they could plead out or make a deal. Looks like in the beginning, before the second degree charge was added, second degree murder charge was added to the case, that's when the story changed from it was an accident, she didn't know, maybe she hit him with her car and didn't know because she was so drunk, which is still the narrative told by people even on this side of the fence, like she's guilty of something. I mean, I don't even consider them really on this side of the fence. To me, it's an obvious case. I feel like the grand jury did was an obvious case of murder too. And we'll talk about the reasons they come across in the documentary. Hammers home why she got that charge. And John O'Keefe's friends are brilliant in this. Brilliant. Fantastic. And I'm going to go over a few points and then we're going to get into today's hearing. But I mean, if she wanted to make a film showing why she's an unpleasant, guilty person, psychopath, she did a great job. And we heard in the hearing, Hank Brennan, I'll get to it, but he quotes the TV show today. I can't even call it a documentary. I call it a TV show. It's really made for entertainment purposes. But there's some good things in it. I gotta tell you it straight. There are some things in it that are very compelling as far as guilt for Karen Read. I couldn't believe, I mean, when she said it's either Jen McCabe's going down or I was going down, I thought, well, if Hank Brennan doesn't bring that in, he's an idiot, because that so clearly demonstrates that she was the one who was going to point the fingers at everyone else to get away with this serious crime. She's talking about, I mean, this charge carries with it possible life sentence. Now, 20 years to life in prison. I don't think, in Massachusetts, we'll get to that. In very blue Massachusetts, very lenient judges. I don't think she'll get that, but could be. Certainly not Judge Cannoni. It's hard to imagine her, former defense attorney, sentencing Karen Read to such a harsh sentence. I'm not sure how sentences go. I don't know how they're done I only know how they're done federally in New York. I don't know how much the judge has to do with the judge, or how if it's mandatory. I wouldn't think so, but don't know. If anyone's from that area knows, that's something I'll look into. Maui Swift says, happy birthday, Maestro. Thank you for your hard work and videos. Kitties. Thank you, Maui Swift. Kitties 1993 says, happy birthday, Maestro. Karen Read was amazing in her new show. Wasn't she amazing? I mean, that's why I call this episode, she points the finger at herself. It's really hard to believe there's a conspiracy. There's a lot of shots of her behind the scenes with her defense attorneys, and it all looks just like a clown show. Alan Jackson comes off terribly. David Yannetti, they used some of the clips that I've shown you guys in his office with the horrible curtains. Do you guys remember that? Some more of the regulars have to remember that. So in the beginning, she's asked directly if she killed John O'Keefe by reversing into him in her rather large SUV. And she says, I feel weird answering that. She's like, no, I did not hit John O'Keefe with my car. I didn't reverse, she says. So now she's saying that her car didn't even go into reverse, that she's disputing her car data that showed that at that time that she went in reverse. I think it's 12:36. She went in reverse and hit him. Correct me if I'm wrong. But she says, I feel weird answering that because people are going to think, did I look up to the left or the right? So she's aware of people looking for signs of deception in her face. She knows that she looks the wrong way, trying to remember. I think if you look up and to the right, if you're right-handed, I think, if you're remembering correctly, if you look up to the left, you're fabricating all these signs of deception. She's very, very aware, and she's trying to control her face. She also says in a recent interview yesterday that I played on Kick last night with the glare that she's a very controlling person. And that's something I've been saying all through this, that this is a crime about power and control. Karen Reed is a person about power and control. I believe she's a psychopath. And when John O'Keefe said, I'm done with this, she said, I'm going to teach you a lesson and punish him. And she meant to seriously injure him or kill him. I think the conclusion is that she knew she hit him, and she knew he didn't have a coat, that she knew he had to die if he was left in that condition unconscious. And she says, in no way, there is 0% chance that this was an accident. Again, another admission from Karen Reed. Some other things in it. Alan Jackson says, this so-called justice system will never be the same after this. The justice system is so fraudulent in Massachusetts, and I'd have to agree with him, not for the reasons that he says, but because of lawyers like him getting away with what they did. And we'll talk about today's hearing and what the ultimate sanctions were for the defense for lying to the court, lying to the jury. She could have gotten acquitted. There would have been no remedy, and it would have been done on the large basis of a lie. I mean, the best thing that the defense had were the ARCA witnesses, or are the ARCA witnesses. Now, I think they're useless. They're coming in. Spoiler alert, they're coming in. But I don't think it's going to matter. I think I was very bleak about, I don't know, what was it, 6 weeks ago? I really felt like Karen Reed was going to get away with this. I'm still not certain that Aidan Carney is going to get convicted. But Karen Reed, I'm doubtful that she'll get acquitted at this point. The judge is making it extremely difficult for the Commonwealth. I feel, of course, all the Karen Reed supporters feel that the judge is so biased for the Commonwealth. I don't know how they can see that, but I think they see anything that's not 100% support of the defense as bias against Karen Reed and unfairness, and they have to know that it's going very badly for them, and that I don't know if it's going to be the second degree charge, although I think Hank Brennan is going to really hammer that home. But I certainly don't think she's going to walk out of there. I may be wrong. I may be too hopeful now. I've been disappointed and wrong before, but I don't see how she's going to get out of this. He's bringing in all these statements that she's made, and I believe it's her own words, and I've always said this, that will convict her. I think it's less about the experts, less about the car data, and I think her own words are really going to burn into the brains of the jurors. Karen Reed also says that when she pulls up to 34 Fairview, the house didn't look inviting. Now, what did she expect? Did she expect a full balloons on there and streamers, welcome Karen? I mean, what is an inviting house so late at night? What does she expect the house to look like? Did she expect fireworks that spelled welcome Karen in the sky? And they said this is a classic whodunit. So we need to look deeper into what happened here. That's, she says she had no memory of anything happened. Could I've run him over? The heat blasting. Could he be so drunk? She constantly stresses that it was really John O'Keefe's fault. And that's a pattern over and over again in this TV show that Karen Reed basically blames everyone else. She should have listened to her father. It's her father's fault. He told her not to go out that night, but she didn't listen. It's his fault for being so drunk. Could I have run over his foot? And she says, accidentally hit him. Yannetti says that he thought she accidentally hit him. This is a district court motor vehicles homicide case. So that's where you get the change in story. So as soon as it went up to a more serious case, murder 2, bring out the conspiracy. Karen Reed says, I was looking forward to having all this behind me. Speaking of not being allowed to be around the O'Keefe family or go to John O'Keefe's funeral. Didn't seem like she was desperate to. She's never been to his grave. But she was looking forward to having all this behind me. As if you could, if you were a feeling person, you could ever get over taking the life of your police officer boyfriend. But okay. You know what? It doesn't matter what he does. I mean, if you killed someone you were with for 2 years in the manner that she did, how do you put that behind you? I mean, this is the problem with psychopaths. They're so off note. This is something I talk about when I talk about Amanda Knox. She's so off note and puts people at edge. People who've been really given the propaganda, really soaked in the propaganda campaign that Amanda Knox has done, said, I'm supposed to think she's innocent, but she gives me the creeps. I would think the same would be with Karen Reed. There's something very off with her. She's the outsider. She's the patsy, her lawyers say. They wanted a pound of flesh. It's all about how terrible, they were treating her. They show her arrest. Very much people have made the comparison to Jodi Arias. When Karen Reed got arrested by Michael Proctor, she was in her pajamas, braless, with big furry slippers, and says, well, can I these change into pants? I don't want to be on Channel 2 News like this. Jodi Arias, same thing. Can I put on makeup for her mugshot? And Proctor says, you see how crazy she is? She's worried about how she appears on the news when she was just arrested for a murder 2 charge. What's going on? And I believe that's when the vendetta for Michael Proctor started. Right there. She got wind of that tape of him calling her crazy and not being as cooperative with her as she would have liked when she got arrested. And she's resisting arrest. She won't put her hands behind her back. And she's insisting on getting underwear and pants. And the next image you see, she's wearing jeans. They gave her jeans. So and she said the 2 nights in jail were the worst nights of her life. There's a lot of omissions. They say Turtle Boy was a teacher who left. I believe he got fired from his job as a teacher and became a blogger. Karen Reed, says that she speaks to Turtle Boy every day and that she only gives out information in the public domain. This comes into the hearing today. I'll talk about that in a minute. They showed them booing the victim's family. Very compelling part was when they put the 200 feet buffer zone in front of the courthouse for the trial. And the Karen Reed supporters are saying, well, they should have they're duct taping our mouths. They're invading on our right to free speech, essentially. And they said, we have to find a way to get around it. So it wasn't that this was done for Karen Reed to preserve her right to a fair trial. We don't want a fair trial. They show Aiden Turtleboy Carney saying he wants to infect the jury pool, taint the jury pool. Doesn't look good for Karen Reed. None of this looks good for Karen Reed. And the collusion between Turtleboy, she says, well, I only gave him public information. But that's what we know. Alan Jackson told Gretchen Voss, I'm not supposed to tell you this. Wait until it's public to report it. That was in the judge's footnotes of a recent judge's decision from Canoni. That's coming in. So you would have to be a fool to think, and Hank Brennan made the same argument, that they didn't do the same thing with Aiden Turtleboy. Give him information that they shouldn't have, told him to wait until it was out in a public filing, that they got information out in filings that weren't even related to the information. They just snuck in certain pieces of information in filings as a way to make it public. And we know as a fact that they would say it's been reported as. So then they would refer to Aiden Carney as that he had gotten a scoop and that they were using his scoop when they had given him the scoop. So they'd use in their own filings, this information was reported as, and then they'd cite Aiden Turtleboy Carney, who, by the way, his bail was not revoked today, even after he got his witness. He did another witness intimidation charge. He got his 20th, and he went beyond his bail things, went beyond the confines of his bail agreement. He's not going, he's walking around still. What a victim-friendly place is Massachusetts, huh? But let me just see if I can get through this. What else is in my notes? So they said we have to get around this 20 feet buffer zone. Aiden Carney says he wants to infect the jury pool. And they say, well, we can't wear free Karen Reed garb inside the courthouse, so we all have to come up with a color, and Karen thought of pink. She says, I don't wear pink, but I like pink. Basically, we have duct tape around our mouth, one free Karen reader is saying in this TV show, disgustingly titled A Body in the Snow. And she talks about a glass. We'll get to it in this hearing. Hank Brennan picked up on it. She talks about a glass. Let's hear Hank Brennan refer to it at today's hearing. Hold on 1 minute. Okay. So she talks about pulling out a shard of glass from John O'Keefe's nose, and the blood was gushing, and badly doing CPR. She never cleared his airways. There's no way she could have done CPR. But of course, it makes her look bad to do that. Jen McCabe says no one's done CPR on the tape, the 911 phone call. But here's Hank Brennan talking about how Karen Reed says that the cocktail that John O'Keefe was holding when he was hit, Karen Reed admits in this TV show, A Body in the Snow, that it was her glass and that there was a shard of glass planted in his nose. She picked it out of his face and it was gushing blood. How it was gushing blood when he didn't have any heartbeat, I'll never know. Sounds like a made-up story to me. But let's listen to, let me go back, Hank Brennan to it.
Those names shouldn't be on there, but also it doesn't give the full picture of the actual testimony. The issue regarding glass, I expect, is going to be a issue in the next case, and I say that because we learned last night for the first time.
Actually, let me play it. This is so low. Excuse me. I didn't realize. Thank you for your patience. Let me wait for my computer to catch up.
I'm on a public airing of an episode that the defendant.
Let me actually play this at normal speed. My apologies. I thought I'd play everything. I have so much to talk about that I play it. My apologies at sped up speed.
Suggests that Mr.
Let me go back.
Last night, for the first time on a public airing of an episode, that the defendant suggests that Mr. O'Keefe took her vodka soda glass out of her car. Now, that is the first time we've had any statements from Ms. Reed suggesting that. And also, there was another statement regarding a claim that Ms. Reed pulled glass from John O'Keefe's face. Never heard that before. So we have this evolving or new testimony, or statements about glass. And so I think first, I'd like to consider this new information that we just learned last night. And secondly, I am reluctant to agree to a simple summary of part of the witness's testimony.
Okay, so there you go. We have new statements. We don't know what to think of it. And these statements from Karen Reed and her lawyers were referred to. Hank Brennan was brilliant in court, but it starts out with Judge Cannoni making her awaited decision, long-awaited decision on sanctions in this case. Here we go.
A decision on the Commonwealth's motion to exclude employees of ARCA. So I think I told counsel before that I had reviewed. So first we had full hearing from counsel. I heard from the lawyers. I heard from Mr. Alessi on behalf of the lawyers. I've read the transcripts. I've listened to the sidebar conference and read that transcript. And I've certainly read the pleadings. So based on all the evidence, I conclude that there has not been the candor required of all lawyers has not been demonstrated here. I find that there have been repeated misrepresentations made to the court by defense counsel, and I conclude that they were deliberate concerning the relationship with the ARCA witnesses. They were made at side.
That is a really important finding. And this is all on the record, so that it is deliberate. So sorry, Alessi, with your long argument about how it wasn't deliberate, how the voir dire was the notice, and a lot of other ridiculous arguments. It's deliberate. They deliberately lied to the court. They presented these witnesses and the jury. So if Karen Reed, as I said before, if Karen Reed had got acquitted, the Commonwealth would have no remedy for Karen Reed getting acquitted on this fraud. So if these lawyers can get away with a fraud upon the court, and get their client to walk, you can't retry her for a charge like this. It's no double jeopardy applies. So pretty serious. She stresses the seriousness of it, and then you'll see what the remedy of it is. She's most concerned with Karen Reed's right to a fair trial and good representation. Now, this is something that Adam Lally put in his pre-trial filings, that Karen Reed cannot appeal on the basis of insufficient assistance of counsel because her lawyers are acting so egregiously. I believe in the sidebar, the same thing was said to Karen Reed. I'm warning you that you're using lawyers that are breaking the law. You're using criminal lawyers. Do you want to keep them? And Karen Reed told the court, spoiler alert, I desperately want to keep these fraudulent lawyers. Odd for an innocent person, no?
Sidebar, in open court, and in pleadings. And I think the record is pretty clear, and I find that on July 25th, 2024, payment was made to the ACCA witnesses. Yet on February 26, 2025, in a pleading written by Ms. Little, signed by all three defense counsel, says the Commonwealth's motion to exclude these exculpatory expert witnesses, ACCA witnesses, who were not hired or paid for by the defense, is not made in good faith and is a desperate and transparent attempt to keep exculpatory testimony of neutral expert witnesses from reaching the jury in this case.
You see, this is their filing. We've filled our discovery. They haven't filled their Rule 14, and it's still going on in this case. They're still violating their Rule 14 discovery obligations, hiding information about witnesses and not turning it in on time, and nothing's being done. That's what Hank Brennan said. Now, ACCA witnesses are coming in. The good news about that is that I don't think it will matter. Hank Brennan will destroy them. It's already cat's out of the bag. They're useless. They're already getting other witnesses to come in. The defense even knows it, that they're useless at this point. They're such hired guns. All those emails back and forth from the defense are coming in. I'm sure if Hank Brennan's smart. But I just want to pull up Tater Bug's comment that the judge, are you talking about the judge being brainwashed? If that's what you're referring to, forgive me if I'm wrong. I don't have time to read the comments in depth. I'd have to disagree with you. The judge knows exactly what she's doing. She knows exactly how fraudulent defense attorneys operate, and she permitted it in her court. And again, we watch her permit fraudulent behavior, breaking of the law in her court. She may do sanctions post-trial. I'm doubtful of that happening, but okay. That may happen, but I doubt it. I think we're going to get an admonishment, but what she was most concerned with is Karen Reed appealing on, which is what most convicts, killer convicts do. So they appeal, they're saying their lawyers weren't good enough.
The next page. Ironically, the Commonwealth accuses the defendant of failing to comply with her discovery obligations while conceding that the information is not in her care, custody, or control. Moreover, here, The defense has gone above and beyond its reciprocal discovery obligations and has already satisfied all of its mandatory discovery obligations under Rule 14 and turned over all additional information in the control and custody of the defense relating to the ARCA witnesses as ordered by the court. So I find or conclude that that was a material misrepresentation and that it was deliberate. So I find that there is a flagrant violation of the Rule 14 obligations. And before I decide which sanctions are appropriate, I need to see defense counsel and Ms. Reed at sidebar. I'm going to ask that the Commonwealth remain where they are. I'm going to seal this sidebar, but I need to have a colloquy with Ms. Reed before I figure out exactly what I'm going to do here.
So I believe this went something like this. You know, Miss Reed, your lawyers broke the law or made a misstatement and violated essentially their oath as lawyers. You know, would you like, new representation? And Karen Reed says, no, I desperately want to keep them. And the judge says, well, I have to warn you that you cannot appeal on insufficient grounds of insufficient assistance of counsel. And Karen Reed says, I understand that. They seal that, so we'll never know if that's the way it went. That's the way I think it went. Essentially saying to Karen Reed, the most important thing to Judge Canoni is that this trial go on time. I think it's a grave mistake. It's as if Judge Everett continued on and let everyone stay on Donna Adelson's trial, for those that watched that, when it came out that Rashbaum couldn't be on it, couldn't stay on it when he resigned, saying, we're going to go forward. Oh, Donna, you want to keep him? Okay, Donna, you're going to keep him. And I don't know what would have happened with Charlie testifying, but essentially having Donna choose what happened there. I mean, this is the difference between Florida and Massachusetts. And I think what we're learning in this trial is how important a good judge is in a case. And if I think Karen Reed walks, I think the judge is an important factor in this. I think if Karen Reed gets convicted of a puny little charge, I think that we would have to talk about the judge. We do not see everything in a case. The judge decides what evidence the jury is going to see. We're not told the whole story. The whole truth doesn't come out in trial. We see an edited version of the truth. And the editor of that truth is the judge. And I think she's made banana decisions in this case. Letting in Marie Russell, but more seriously is Richard McNasty Green, letting him in, who has an opinion that is so debunked that the Cellbrite program had to rewrite their entire program so that no one would make the same mistake Richard Green made in reading the data. But she's going to let it in and let that confuse the jury. I do not think this is going to be a quick deliberation. I think it's going to be a very long deliberation for reasons like that. For one or two jurors to be confused by Richard Green, and then they have to spend their time having the rest of the smarter jurors, or the jurors that listen more carefully, convince these two confused jurors. It's a mess. So let me get back. We go to sidebar. And when we come back from sidebar, big surprise, shocking surprise from Judge Canoni. I've already spoiled it for you, but here it is.
All right. So there's no greater constitutional right than the defendant's right to a fair trial, including a fair and impartial jury, the right to present a defense and confront witnesses, and the right to counsel, which includes counsel of her choice. So I've just had a thorough colloquy with Ms. Reed. I believe it was extensive and thorough, and she has expressed to me a strong desire to continue with her lawyers. Ms. Yannetti, is Mr. Jackson lead counsel? I just want to make the record clear. Mr. Jackson, are you lead counsel?
We don't define our roles in such a matter, Your Honor.
Okay, so because Mr. Yannetti is not pro hoc vice counsel, and Mr. Yannetti can try this case if need be by himself. All right, but Ms. Reed does have a strong desire to keep all of her lawyers, notwithstanding the Rule 14 violation and the apparent lack of candor, the findings and rulings I've made. So
Why would Yannetti, and this makes no sense to me. Someone explain this to me. Whoever asked who Richard Green is, he is the defense witness, forensic witness, who testified in the first trial that he was sure that Jennifer McCabe looked up how long to die in the cold at 2:27 instead of 6:23 and 6:24, correct time, and that she deleted things. She didn't delete things. It goes into, it's the way your phone or computer works. It goes into a deleted folder on your phone. It doesn't mean you physically deleted it. Jessica Hyde also testified to that. She, both, and Ian Witness testified to the 6:23 and 6:24 time search. Cellbrite, which is the most used forensic data system, had to rewrite the entire program due to this error in this case in looking at that forensic data and determining a 2:27 time search when she opened up her browser last. So they rewrote their program to avoid mistakes like Richard Green made in this case. So please explain to me, getting back to this subject matter, why David Yannetti would still be Karen Reed's lawyer. Now, the judge made it clear, and I'm not including Robert Alessi in this. He came in late, although he did sign some documents that he lied to the court too. Don't forget, saying that these were absolutely independent witnesses all the way through, through early February. Why would Yannetti, who has all these, what in my opinion, are fraudulent lawyers on his, they're all on his license. Robert Alessi's from New York. Little and Jackson are from LA, and they're all on his license, Massachusetts license. And they all lied. She made it clear that they all lied. They all signed these statements, lying to the court. So why would Yannetti be allowed to, why would he try this case alone? That doesn't make sense. But it gives you a hint of where she's going, the direction she's going.
based on that, I am not going to revoke pro hoc vice licenses. I don't expect to have to address this again. Candor with the court is essential. It's the bedrock obligation of all lawyers who appear in this court and all courts in Massachusetts. A lawyer is only as good as his or her word.
Right, and they're only as good as, I think there's a double meaning to that, or I took it as a double meaning. Meaning, the point I've been making is if you're such a good lawyer, you don't need to lie. You don't need to break the law. The easy way to go into court is to lie to the court. You can make up any facts you want. You can use bloggers and journalists and innocence fraud campaigns to win your case. But really good lawyers use the law. Not so here. But she stresses the importance of this, and not an hour later or less, Alan Jackson's again misstating facts to the court, and not a word from the judge about it.
I need to be able to take counsel at their word. So I'm not going to tolerate false statements, any stretching of the truth, no misleading.
As she tolerated false statements, stretching of the truth, misleading statements at this hearing today. Sounded good, didn't it? She knows. She was a defense attorney. She knows how this works. And it feels like she's rooting for Karen Read to get off. She's doing everything in her power to get Karen Read out of the trouble she's in. You know,
distortions. There's no place for that in the courtroom. And Mr. Jackson, you stated this very eloquently in your closing argument last time. So, Commonwealth, I am denying your motion to exclude the ARCA witnesses. Those witnesses can testify as long as counsel complies with their reciprocal discovery obligations.
Which it's curious to know if they will now. But here's an interesting thing. She's inviting in witnesses that lied to the court to come in and lie again. Now, I don't know. I mean, the wisdom of that. Curious to know what another lawyer would say to this. I know that David McKenzie, who's a defense lawyer, who talked about the Karen Read case and lawyering with me in one episode, sent me a text message when this happened. It was like, wow, they got their hands caught in the cookie jar here. Like, this is really serious. And lawyers know how serious this is. You cannot misrepresent things to the court. This is why innocence fraud campaigns usually do these things, say these wild things to the press and not in court. However, David McKenzie was shocked that these innocence fraud lawyers, Innocence Project lawyers in the Julius Jones case were flagrantly violating the rules of the court and the rules of the land and acting like criminals. And he said, you know, you can advocate for your client, but you cannot lie, cheat, and steal. That's how he described it. So she's aiding and abetting at this point by letting it happen. She's making it happen. Judge Cannone lying, cheating, and stealing in her courtroom. However, I'm feeling more hopeful than ever that the weight of the evidence, we may get another hung jury, but the weight of the evidence is very strong in this case. And certainly Karen Read's own statements are very, very damning. Gonna take a quickie break. I come back. I'm gonna just play my Alan Jackson song for the break. It's always a fun one. I think it's appropriate right now. When we get back, we're gonna go through the rest of the hearing very quickly, or I hope very quickly. A few things to talk about. Elizabeth Little brings up third-party culprits, that she doesn't want them sitting in the courtroom as if they ever developed a third-party culprit in this case. The defense never did, yet they're naming Jennifer McCabe and co. as third-party culprits. And there is a big showdown between Alessi and Jackson. Stay tuned. When I get back, don't go anywhere.
the police. When my con gets exposed, I act deaf and dumb. Blame sudden onset amnesia. Got the press under my thumb. Drinks with my killer client at Smith and Walensky. Check paid for by fans, my elbow on the killer's knee. I'm a lawyer, a criminal lawyer. Think like a criminal, spout legalese. Lying by profession. When in doubt, blame the police. When my con gets exposed, I act deaf and dumb. Blame sudden onset amnesia. Got the press under my thumb. Drinks with my killer client at Smith and Walensky. Check paid for by fans, my elbow on the killer's knee.
Okay, here we go. So Eliza Little brought up she wants to keep witnesses like Jennifer McCabe. Hey, Eva, thank you very much. Mimicking Peggy was Patty McCormick, the bad seed. Yeah, there's a part where Karen Reed, Mother Always Knows, Peggy O'Keefe, says that Karen Reed says that Peggy O'Keefe in the hospital said that Karen Reed hit him with a car. Looks like he's been hit by a car. And she says it to make her look, Karen Reed kind of screws up her face, makes herself look like a terrible wretch. And it's meant to make Peggy O'Keefe come off badly, but it only makes Karen Reed come off badly, as does most of the documentary. I don't think there's too many endearing moments. They put in childhood home movies. She looks like the bad seed, or she looks like the twins, as I've said, and Maestro said from The Shining. Family comes off as just saying, deluded and supportive. I think there's a point where Nathan Reed says, my sister only grieves for so long, and then she just gets past the loss. She goes beyond the loss, as if you could go beyond the loss like this. I mean, just ridiculous. She easily got over it. I don't think you want to say that, Nathan. I don't think that makes her look sympathetic, but okay. So back to today's hearing. Liza Little, as Karen Reed calls her, wants to keep out these witnesses, and she calls them third-party culprit witnesses. Now, this was something that in the first trial, the judge said that they could develop, but they just towed the line and really went over the line, I think. But okay, once again, nothing happened. And immediately in opening statements, Yannetti's saying that someone else did this. They said they could develop in cross-examination. Someone else did this. So they didn't name anyone specific, but she's been framed and, someone else did this. Karen Reed has been framed. Everyone remembers Yannetti's dramatic opening statement. Here, Liza Little's upset. The defense wants to keep out witnesses from watching the closing arguments and testimony after they've testified. This is to keep Jennifer McCabe came And I think, and what they call their other third-party culprit witnesses came back and watched closing arguments. So here we go. Here's Eliza Little. I might move it to like a little bit faster if it's too slow, but actually, yeah, let me just move this. Yeah, let me just move her to like just a little faster than normal.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm handling the motion to exclude certain witnesses. The court has broad discretionary power to sequester witnesses before, after, and during their testimony under Massachusetts Rule of Criminal Procedure 21. The defense respectfully requests that this court issue an order for sequestration in keeping with what the Commonwealth also requested. But additionally, excluding Brian Higgins and members of the Albert and McCabe families after they testify.
So do you mean after the evidence is closed?
I mean, after they've taken the stand.
So after they've taken the stand, but so witnesses are sequestered not to influence any testimony. So once the evidence is closed, just before closing arguments, are you saying they should not be permitted to come into the court for closing arguments?
Yes.
Focus on that part of your motion.
Yes, Your Honor. We're asking that they not be able to attend closing arguments, and this is why. As the court likely recalls, at the first trial, members of the Albert and McCabe families continued to attend court after their testimony. During closing arguments, Colin Albert, Ryan Albert, and Jennifer McCabe were all seated in the jury box with the O'Keefe family. At least one juror who was seated in this case indicated to a reporter at Vanity Fair that she felt intimidated by their presence at closing arguments.
That's what that innocent fraudster reporter wrote, who's only written pro-criminal articles, wrote a love letter piece to Karen Reed, wrote, who knows if it's true or not. I take it with a little grain of salt. Hank Brennan refers to it as a nameless, faceless person.
Your Honor, a sitting juror reporting feeling intimidated by the presence of third-party culprits towards the close of the case is highly concerning.
Was this a deliberating juror?
I don't know. He or she was anonymous.
Okay.
And Your Honor, that was by design. There is information that the Massachusetts State Police and the District Attorney's Office wanted to have the third-party culprits seated there during closing arguments. And so on that basis, the defense is requesting, in order to protect Jeri from being any sort of undue influence or intimidation, or even just the potential that a juror might feel that way, as we know at least one did in this case, we're asking that they be sequestered after their testimony and during closing arguments.
What's your position on the Commonwealth's motion to exclude the family members of both the defendant and the victim?
I believe that the sequestration order, yes, we join in that request.
Okay.
The only exception I would note is that experts should be able to obviously watch other expert testimony that deals with their.
All right. So obviously is not something that should be in a motion. Okay. If you've got an agreement that each other's experts can be in the courtroom during the testimony, that's one thing, but it's not obvious that they're permitted. Okay.
I just wanted to make sure that would be excluded from the order that the Commonwealth proposed.
Ooh. Oh, this is something I missed during. Look at Karen Reed's face. She's getting admonished by the judge. Elizabeth Little is for saying, obviously, it's obvious to everyone. And this was the kind of language that the defense uses in their motions. Obviously, very over the top language. Look at Karen Reed there. Check her out. She's pissed. She's looking over her shoulder at Elizabeth Little. You're making me look bad. But the whole team looks defeated. Alan Jackson is playing with his watch. Have you ever seen Robert Alessi and his water bottle? He drinks water like a dying man in the Sahara, but like he can't control his hand to the mouth. Like he can't really like navigate it well. It's just like he grips it in such an odd way and tips his head all the way back. It's so weird. Like he's afraid it's going to like pour out of his mouth or spill. It's the oddest. I find it the oddest, most distracting thing in court. If he does it in this clip, I'll draw your attention to it. It's so odd.
Permitted. Okay.
I just wanted to make sure that would be excluded from the order that the Commonwealth proposed. Because the way that they wrote it, it says all witnesses. And I'm guessing that, I won't speak for Mr. Brennan, but I'm guessing that they will want their experts to watch our experts and vice versa.
All right, so you all need to talk. All right, and if there's a disagreement, you need to put it in writing. Generally, experts are permitted, but it's not a given, okay? All right, Mr. Brennan, do you want to weigh in on people being able to, I'm concerned about after the evidence is closed.
I think it's unfortunate that not only a time-honored tradition, but an entitlement for a witness after the evidence is closed to come into the closing and watch the closing. The defense tries to take an opportunity to provide an unsolicited bashing on their target.
Whoa, look at Karen Reed again. She's having another one of her freakouts at her lawyers. This I missed the first time around. Look at Karen Reed here as Hank Brennan says, basically he's saying, and he'll get to it, isn't it a bit of irony that the defense doesn't want witnesses in the court after they testify for closing for fear of intimidating anyone, when this is a team that has spearheaded a witness harassment campaign of intimidating witnesses and harassing the victim's family too. I'd add that. But look at Karen Reed here. She has a little freak out, a little mad out at the defense. Check it out.
They name Higgins, Albert. They invoke those names. They characterize third-party culprit. And they suggest that some anonymous person was uncomfortable. It seems as though the presentation has a deliberate point to promote a cause, but doesn't have any sense of balance or fairness whatsoever. Witnesses, all witnesses from either side should be able to come into a courtroom after the evidence is closed, the sequestration order has ended, and watch a closing. Grace can be offered in these circumstances sometimes, and that's what I've tried to do in my motion. Ms. Reed has 3 potential family members who are potential witnesses for the government.
Wait, did I miss it? I just want to go back. You really have to see this. It's right when it's like a long shot on him, and it's right here. Keep your eye on right there. There you go. That's what I'm talking about. You see it? Do you see it? Do you see Karen Reed? Let's just watch it. She's about to strike, and then I'll move forward.
Closed to come into the.
Keep your eye on Karen Reed here. She has something to say to Elizabeth
Closing
Little.
And watch the closing.
Oh, Alan Jackson or Elizabeth Little. Hard to know who she's talking to here. Crazy eyes are out.
The defense tries to take an opportunity to provide an unsolicited bashing.
Looks like that was an admonishment by Karen Reed to Elizabeth Little. Don't know. Can't hear it. Wasn't there.
On their targets. They name Higgins, Albert. They invoke those names. They characterize third-party culprit. And they suggest that some anonymous person was uncomfortable. It seems as though the presentation has a deliberate point to promote a cause, but doesn't have any sense of balance or fairness whatsoever. Witnesses, all witnesses from either side should be able to come into a courtroom after the evidence is closed, the sequestration order has ended, and watch a closing. Grace can be offered in these circumstances sometimes, and that's what I've tried to do in my motion. Ms. Reed has 3 potential family members who are potential witnesses for the government. And certainly I would have a right to try to ask the court or insist that they should be sequestered. But I've specifically asked that they not be sequestered. I think that an accused has a strong need to have family support in the courtroom. It's not in the benefit of the government or the Commonwealth, but it's fair, it's just, it's graceful. And I think that Ms. Reed's family should sit through the court testimony, even if they're called as witnesses, as should Mr. O'Keefe's immediate family. the idea that witnesses should not come in after a evidence rests and during a closing, not only does it seem quite unfair, it doesn't seem to have any basis in law, in justness, in courtesy. And so I ask you to deny the idea that these targets of the defense should not be able to attend the closing. But I do ask you to endorse my motion that would allow family members to have the benefit to sit through the court proceedings, even if they may or even if they do become witnesses.
So there is a change in language. Did everybody catch that? So Elizabeth Little is allowed to present these. They've never developed that any of these people did anything. If you watch my opening, Alan Jackson and Karen Reed don't know who did it, but they're perfectly happy to identify third-party culprits, and she uses that language specifically. All these lawyers are wordsmiths. They choose their words carefully. And the point is to rile up the Free Karen Reed base, because they know the campaign is waning. I would think people are dropping out like flies, the more rationals. She will always have her disturbed, deranged criminal defenders, people who've broken the law themselves, who just hate law enforcement, who want to see her get over on the government, people who have personality disorders, other things. But I think the group of decent, more fair-minded people would be dropping out like flies. There's always people who get duped by these innocence fraud campaigns, and they're not all terrible people. Some of them are really good people that just get fooled. And, the reason I started my podcast was I was one of these people who got fooled by these documentaries. I thought the West Memphis Three were innocent. And when I first heard a podcast saying that with guests on who thought they were guilty, I had never heard that. Everything in the media, and this is the point of innocence fraud campaigns, why they work the media so intensely. Everything in the media was about their innocence. These were innocent people. I was excited when they got out of prison. I thought a right had been, I'd seen the documentaries, and that's what everybody who thinks the West Memphis Three are innocent have in common, is they've seen the documentaries. But so I thought, oh, isn't that interesting? Let me look into it. And so that when I heard Serial, I saw a pattern. And Amanda Knox is another campaign that fooled me. Serial did not, but Amanda Knox, I was fooled by. I didn't know. First I was a supporter, then I didn't know. And ultimately I saw how, overwhelming the evidences of her guilt. But good people get fooled. I'm not saying that I'm a good person, but it's not all. You can't say all these people are terrible, because they're not. They're not. This is a movement of exploitation. Exploits people.
Okay.
And it exploits our compassionate nature and our sense for justice. So that is Hank Brennan. But it gets dicey. Let's go forward about 10 minutes. When the defense when Hank Brennan talks about, does he go on here? Talks about witness harassment campaigns.
As should Mr. O'Keefe's immediate family. The idea that witnesses should not come in after a evidence rests and during a closing, not only does it seem quite unfair, it doesn't seem to have any basis in law, in justness, in courtesy. And so I ask you to deny the idea that these targets of the defense should not be able to attend the closing. But I do ask you to endorse my motion that would allow family members to have the benefit to sit through the court proceedings, even if they may or even if they do become witnesses.
Okay,
Your Honor, if I could address one issue.
sure.
There is some additional information. I was hoping we might be able to address sidebar because it is subject to a protective order, but I would like to make a record.
All right, let's move forward here. About 10 minutes. That's what I have it down as. Okay. Okay, here we
This
go.
motion eliminate to exclude irrelevant, inadmissible, and prejudicial evidence regarding alleged harassment and/or intimidation of witnesses.
So here the defense is saying that they should exclude all references to the witness harassment campaign that Karen Reed herself and her legal team spearheaded and started, created, did completely with the help of Aiden Turtleboy Carney, who's has 20 witness harassment charges against him. Today in court, after getting his 20th charge, they let him walk. Did not send him back to jail. And here is where the defense intentionally, in my view, purposely misstates fact. Now, the judge has already noted that the defense has told Gretchen Voss, because her unedited tapes have come in, including statements by lawyers, that Alan Jackson tells Gretchen Voss, I'm not supposed to give you this piece of information. Judge Cannoni doesn't say what that piece of information is, what it is, but you can write about it when we put it in a filing. So this is how Aiden Turtleboy Carney, I believe he was leaked information so that they could reference it in a filing. So a little bit different than what happened with Gretchen Voss in that instance. So he was leaked information and would write about it in a filing. And then the defense would present it to the court as it has been reported. And they would put in the footnotes Aiden Carney as the reporter. So the thing that they leaked, it's just a criminal act in my view. And it's an act of deep dishonesty to present to the court that Aiden Carney has independently investigated something and reported something without the help of the defense, when it's the defense that gave him that information, just so they could get it out in a motion and incite the Free Karen readers. So these motions are not just to the court for the defense, they are also for the public. Ditto the Commonwealth too sometimes.
All right.
Thank you, Your Honor. The first trial, I'll note, was riddled with what we believe to be inadmissible and highly, highly prejudicial testimony from a bunch of witnesses who took the opportunity to describe harassment and distress that they felt from third parties, both on social media and otherwise. No third party, including any blogger, any social media personality, any member of the public, no third party speaks for Ms. Reed. No third party speaks for the defense. No third party acts on behalf of Ms. Reed, is directed by Ms. Reed or the defense, or is under Ms. Reed or the defense's control. None. There were very obviously vile acts that were described.
Well, you wouldn't say Aiden Carney speaks for Miss Reed. You wouldn't say he's under her control, but he is leaked information by the defense to him as a way to benefit Karen Reed, benefit her defense team, because they can't win in court with the facts that they have.
During the course of the first trial, in these witnesses' testimony, to the extent that it did occur, they are obviously in no way condoned by the defense, by Ms. Reed, or anybody connected with the defense in this case. And they're
She did it. What do you mean they're not condoned? She's the one who did it. She told Aidan Carney to go up to Jennifer McCabe and say, you think you can outsmart Karen Reed? What's that? At her child's sports game. What's that?
in no way connected to Ms. Reed or the defense. And notwithstanding that, the witnesses strongly suggested that Ms. Reed and the defense itself were somehow responsible for these alleged and very reprehensible things that they were describing. In one notable instance, Jennifer McCabe recounted being harassed by a blogger. She didn't name the blogger, but she said, quote, "The defense is very familiar with this person," end quote. That was her trial testimony, and she looked right at the jurors when she said it. The very obvious overture was, you know who this is, Mr. Jackson. I was the one cross-examining her, and you're responsible for it. In some way, shape, form, or fashion, she outright suggested to the jury that Ms. Reed and the defense were responsible for the acts that she went on to describe in great detail, in which we agreed, if they occurred, are vile, reprehensible, unacceptable.
We agree if they occurred are vile and reprehensible, and we did them. This is the most, I mean, he just got admonished for lying to the court. Thank you, Lexi Daisical, for becoming a new member, and thank you for gifting 10 memberships. They will be handed out randomly among the chat. Really appreciate your support. This is a listener-supported podcast. I cannot do it without you. Back to Alan Jackson. Just unreal. Unreal. I mean, just the gall of him, too. He just got admonished for lying, and now he's going to misrepresent things to the court. And Hank Brennan uses the word, actually, you know what? I don't want to spoil it for you. No more spoiler alerts. But uses a word you might be familiar with in his rebuttal.
There are clearly, as we all know now, there are clearly people out there who are very deeply concerned about what they consider, the others consider, an unjust prosecution of an innocent person for a crime that she did not commit. There is an enormous...
Yeah, they're all. This is all done. This witness harassment campaign was all done out of concern for Karen Reed. Give me a break. And so here he is, just riling up the free Karen Readers. There's people out there. You hear me, people who free Karen Readers? This is an innocent woman. Crime she didn't commit. This is the innocence fraud refrain of all innocence fraud campaigns everywhere. Convicted or accused. They like to even use the word accused for convicted people. They don't like to remind people that they were convicted by a jury and that verdict has been affirmed by multiple appeals courts often. They've been accused of a crime they didn't commit. It has been a tunnel vision investigation, a sloppy police work. I mean, it could go on and on and on and on and on. Corrupt police department, by a corrupt police department. The Innocence Project was born out of, by O.J. Simpson's lawyer, Barry Scheck, one of his lawyers. Barry Scheck started the Innocence Project with Barry Neufeld, after the O.J. Simpson trial, because he knew that very few people understood DNA, and he could exaggerate the importance of either absence of DNA in a case. And that's how that started. And that civil lawyers could clean up once they got out someone for a wrongful conviction. In our civil courts, where the bar of evidence is much lower, no one's familiar with the case. The judge isn't familiar with the trial, the case, and they could win multi-million-dollar payouts. And this is going on in cities and states all over the country. And really all over the world, but that's how it works in this country.
Amount of emotion injected throughout the community, this community and beyond, and we don't control that. And if people have suffered as a result of that, Ms. Reed very specifically should not be the one to have to bear that burden, and she did in the first trial. Those individuals out there who are emotional about the case, who are a proponent of one side or the other, they speak for themselves, they act for themselves, they act on their own accord. They certainly don't act at the direction of the defense or of Ms. Reed. And to allow these sort of what ultimately can only be described as salacious anecdotes into evidence, coupled with the sobbing and the crying and the breaking down witness stand, which also happened, it serves to visit an extreme and an extraordinary prejudice against Ms. Reed, very, very specifically and very targeted like a laser on her. And it's for conduct that's completely out of her control and completely unassociated with her. What may be most galling about the Commonwealth's presentation of this evidence in the first trial of witness intimidation was that they were in possession. They actually knew. Mr. Lally, Ms. McLaughlin, they knew at the time the information was presented and propounded in front of the jury that a grand jury had been impaneled to hear evidence on whether or not Ms. Reed was in any way liable for witness intimidation.
Right. So because Karen Reed got off, the jury didn't. A jury entrenched in a witness, grand jury soaked in a witness in an innocence fraud campaign didn't indict Karen Reed at the height of the Free Karen Reed movement or close to the peak of it. That means she's innocent, guys. And here Judge Canoni pushes back a little on that. But it's very interesting, the word direction. It's really not at the, it is, direction is a odd word. Hank Brennan described it as a symbiotic relationship. A collusion would be a better word. So it's as if Turtle Boy just gets things from Karen Reed and she directs him what to write. She gives him things. They collaborate together on what the story is going to be, I believe. She says they talk every day and she does feed him information. Hank Brennan will talk about this in the TV show Body in the Snow ID Discovery that aired last night. But to say, she's directing people as if she's like the marshal of an army, of a thoughtless, mindless army, is purposely wrong. Again, these lawyers are wordsmiths. They pick their words carefully. So when the evidence is already out there that they're in collusion, Hank Brennan's trying to bring it in to show consciousness of guilt, meaning he's trying to bring in the evidence of Karen Reed's and Aidan Kearney's collusion, conspiracy, right? More than two people doing something to conspire together to harass witnesses in this case. At the direction is incorrect. So if he gets caught out, he can say, nope, wasn't at the, I just said it wasn't at the direction. I didn't say they didn't collude.
Witness harassment or anything associated with that.
So the grand jury has a particular standard, right? Not any way, right? Probable cause standard, right? Okay.
But notwithstanding that standard, the question was she in any way liable for that harassment and intimidation? And that standard is extremely low. We all know the ham sandwich anecdote. And even the grand jury said, no, there is absolutely nothing to see here. There is no evidence that she was responsible for intimidation or harassment such that they determined that there was a no bill. And what is bothering.
Right. You know, we've never seen what what evidence they used to try to charge her with that. You've certainly seen. Sure, it's just the tip of the iceberg. Heisenberg, thank you very much for your support. It's going to be very hard for her team, especially with Karen saying she didn't reverse into John. Roberta, his hair DNA will speak volumes more now. Right, so his DNA was found in the casing of the taillight. His hair found on the back of her vehicle. Defense says it was planted, very much like O.J. Simpson. This is something that Muir, who was, behind the Body in the Snow doc, directed it, said that this is very much a defense based on O.J. They feel, I'm not, I think it's based on a lot of different innocence fraud campaigns, but that they tried to make Proctor, she calls it the Mark Herman, but she means Mark Furman of the piece, of this case, excuse me. Let's see how that goes. Yeah, I think I've never been so hopeful that things are looking very badly for Karen Read right now, and everyone seems to know it, but Karen Read. Look at her defense lawyers. This feels like a last gasp. I mean, look at the difference between the way they came into the hearings and the trial, such confidence. Although they still have the gall to continue to misrepresent things to the court and lie to the court and to the public.
Bothersome is that the Commonwealth was aware of that and didn't disclose it. We didn't find out about that until in October. I think it was an October notice of discovery when we finally found out that a no bill was issued indicating that Miss Read.
When was that no bill issued?
You said when or where?
When?
I want to say March 23rd, March 27th is what I'm being told. It was late March, before the first trial. And they knew this, and they didn't provide what I believed, and I think what the court would have ruled would be exculpatory information to us to cross-examine these witnesses who say, hey, look, I've suffered at the hands of the community, of these bloggers.
So my memory is I kept it out, and then I have a very clear memory of you opening the door with Jennifer McCabe, and it came in through there.
So the court did make that ruling that ultimately, if the door is open, these witnesses are going to be able to talk about it.
But I kept it out prior to that.
Understood.
Okay.
I don't want to revisit that issue. The court made its ruling. I didn't think that we had opened the door. It was whatever that door was. It was on some very, very significant lubricant. It was going to be very easy.
Read the transcript.
I have several times.
He doesn't think he opened the door. Everybody else says he opened the door. Everybody knew what he did when he did it. They went to sidebar, is my memory of the trial, and it was coming in, meaning the witness harassment was coming in, meaning he opened the subject of harassment first. So then it all came in. It was kept out of the case until they brought it in. And now he's going to argue that Jennifer McCabe purposely made him open the door, made him ask a question, that it was Jennifer McCabe who wanted to insert this witness harassment into the case. If you have the feeling you want to change the channel, please don't. It's going to get very good very soon.
In any event, I believe that the court should make the exact same order this time and have a more defined, we should have a more defined understanding of what would reasonably open that door. I didn't think that I came anywhere close to it. The court disagreed and the information came in. But it's so prejudicial. It was so extremely prejudicial as to this Read that I think we need to revisit that issue and get a more clarifying order about exactly what would be required to open that door. And then we can reasonably, as the defense, we can reasonably sidestep that as best we can. I wasn't able to do that in the first trial because I didn't think that I had even approached the line, but ultimately the court disagreed. So what we're asking in this instance is that we get a clarifying order that it is not admissible. Obviously, if we walk in and say something about witness intimidation, you've never been intimidated by anybody, have you? Obviously, that would open the door. That's not what would happen. That's not what happened last time. What happened last time was Jennifer McCabe basically decided that she wanted to talk about that issue and sort of walked through it, at least in my view, having reviewed the transcript. And in the event, I think the court understands what.
Here he's going to talk about witnesses having feelings and people's feelings. Look, the destruction of people's lives, their children's lives, their jobs taken away, things like that. The pain, listen to Alan Jackson's description of the pain that the witnesses have been through in this case.
What are
Listen to how callous it is. And like all, I'm going to say this is a bit of a redundancy, narcissistic psychopaths. I think Alan Jackson is one. Also, like Karen Reed, a psychopath with no feeling. He has no feeling for the destruction that he causes. He only wants to go forward and gain. And he needs the excitement of breaking the law while doing his job. That's my view of him. It's not a fact. It's just my view, although it is a fact in this case that he broke the law. As did all of Karen Reed's lawyers. Although Robert Alessi had a lesser part in it. But listen to his description of the pain that the witness harassment campaign caused. Listen to how callous it is.
Concern is, with regard to this subject matter, we don't want a free-for-all of people, one person after another, walking into court and basically lambasting the defense, for all intents and purposes, about things that are completely out of our control. Even if there is some suffering by the public or by bloggers or by whomever that these witnesses have had to undergo, that is not at the hands of the defense, and we shouldn't have to, Ms. Reed very specifically, should not have to suffer through that testimony.
Right. The only suffering that matters is the suffering of my client, who is the happiest murderer defendant.
It looks very, very clear that at least the Commonwealth wants the jurors to believe this is all at the hands of Ms. Reed, that she's been the one engaging in this, or the defense has, which is just not true. So we would ask for a clarifying order on that issue very specifically.
Mr. Brennan.
I can appreciate the defense wanting to.
Here's the bomb. Let me go back. Here's the bomb. This is when Hank Brennan's had enough of. And Hank Brennan knows what they've done. They've just, again, misrepresented something to the court. Their relationship, Karen Reed's relationship with Aidan Carney, right after they've gotten a lecture this morning in a public admonishment. That was their sanction. Been sanctioned by the court for lying to the court and misrepresenting things willfully. Then they willfully lie and misrepresent Karen Reed's relationship with Aidan Turtle Boy Carney and the witness harassment campaign, that when you look at the evidence, you can only conclude, a rational person could only conclude, that her lawyers and Karen Reed spearheaded this witness harassment campaign with the help of Aidan Carney. So here's Hank Brennan. Get ready.
I can appreciate the defense wanting to identify the line in which they would open the door to evidence about harassment and abuse of witnesses. I understand why that would be important. But to convert that into a speech that absolutely defies reality and grossly misstates the history and facts of this case is beyond me, It wasn't just last night when Attorney Jackson and his colleagues appeared on a documentary where Miss Reed talked about speaking frequently to Mr. Carney, sharing anything public with him. And you would have to choose to be oblivious to think that that information that is shared was then not generated to intimidate and harass witnesses for 2 years. In fact, Mr. Carney has over a dozen indictments for just that. You've had an opportunity to hear the conversations recorded with Gretchen Voss. You've heard about the tactics used by the defense in the dissemination, not just of public information. So to try to make a public record that is so grossly, not only inept, but fraudulent, I don't understand the purpose of that when the simple question is, what is the threshold of opening a door? We have a motion later this afternoon in another courtroom on this very issue. And I'm not going to go through an entire resuscitation of the evidence or information that I have, because that inevitably would be unfair. But it is unfair to stand up here at this podium and suggest for a second.
So it sounds like Hank Brennan appeared at Aidan Carney's hearing to revoke his bail. But also, good news is that his motion to dismiss was denied. Aidan Turtleboy Carney's, just like Karen Reed's was. So the trial is going forward in June for Aidan Carney. But he's also going to give a little shout out to something that's been featured on this channel in a second.
That Miss McCabe is using a witness box as some type of forum. She didn't drag herself into this case. She was dragged into it. And to suggest they can stand here and bash witnesses in the text of their argument, unsolicited attacks, because it pleases them and fits their narrative, is something I can't just sit by and listen to. The Commonwealth, the prosecutors weren't outside patting their bloggers on the butt for a job well done after witnesses were harassed at the family events.
Okay, that's something that was shown on this channel. It was Grant Smith Ellis's footage. I saw it, immediately clipped it, and put it up on my channel. And that is David Yannetti tapping Aidan Turtleboy Carney's butt. Let's take a look at it. It's on my channel, been memorialized on my channel in a video and in a short. So keep your eye on David Yannetti. He's behind Alan Jackson. So here's David Yannetti in the red tie. If you're listening on podcast, he comes up to Aidan Turtleboy Carney on his way to court. This is the time when they publicly distance themselves from Aidan Turtleboy Carney trial. And here's a pat on the butt for a job well done. Great job harassing those witnesses, Aidan. And there are many phone calls between Aidan Carney, I think 29 between Aidan Carney and Alan Jackson, and many between David Yannetti and Aidan Carney during the time that witnesses were being harassed. And this was all described in an affidavit to get Karen Reed's 2 phones that she communicated with Aidan Carney on using an encrypted app. So did everybody see that? One more time. Just keep your eye on his hand. There we go. Well done. Job well done.
That didn't happen. And so if the issue is, what is the threshold when Mr. Jackson opened the door? Well, you can read the transcript. It's very obvious. Open-ended questions, personal attacks, baseless accusations. That opens the door. And it will open the door again, I suspect. And we'll be prepared. I think the issue is really a trial issue and an attorney having control of their questions so they don't open the door. That really is the issue.
So do you agree it doesn't come in the Commonwealth's case in chief with these witnesses?
I don't think it ever should have come in the case in chief, and I don't think it would have until I saw the very clear questions that opened that door. I have no intention of raising a collateral issue or trying to present prior bad acts that I haven't sought admissibility for. So I agree. I agree.
Wow. So he's saying, you know what, Alan Jackson, you can't help yourself. You're going to open the door again. And when you open the door, we'll be prepared. It's all coming in. Smoke. And I don't think there's a judge's ruling on letting the relationship between Aidan Carney and Karen Reed come in as asked for by the Commonwealth, meaning Hank Brennan, Adam Lally, and Lori McLaughlin. Hey, Jude says, Chat GPT says David Alessi. Oh, you mean Robert Alessi? Did you look up David Alessi or Robert Alessi? Began his legal practice when he founded Alessi and Koenig. Is that him? However, in 2002, he was prohibited from practicing law in Nevada due to disciplinary actions. Is this his California law license? I think this is a different one. This is Robert Alessi, who works in New York, not California. I think you may have looked up the wrong Alessi. Yeah, I was like, well, that would have been so far. I can't imagine New York coming down on him either. It's Hank is 56. I thought he was in his 50s too. Lazy Susan. So that was the big bomb at the end. And that was really the highlight, or one of the highlights for me of the trial. Over the hearing, excuse me. There was also a curious part, I won't play it, where the defense wants the jury to view 34 Fairview and view Karen Reed's smashed to smithereens taillight in her car. And Hank Brennan argued that he's okay with the viewing of 34 Fairview, the scene of the accident, but the scene of the alleged second-degree murder, but he is not okay with the car being shown at the same time because he does not want the jurors to associate daylight with the scene of the, scene of the incident. Let's call it that, not accident. Scene of the incident. Yeah, it's so easy to say it's an accident. Is that why everyone's saying it's an accident? It's so easy to say it's an accident. Usually even accidents that cause death are called accidents, but really can't call it an accident. It's not really accurate. But he does not want the car to be seen by the jury at the same time because they will get the idea that they will associate the car and the scene together in the daylight, not in the beginning of a nor'easter, and will have false ideas about the conditions. Thought that was extremely compelling part of the hearing. So at the end, we had Karen Reed looks like she's going to go on this fool's errand to appeal the Supreme Court federal decision. She got denied. She's going to appeal it. And there was a person representing the state or the Commonwealth, I'm not sure. Yeah, and she still thinks that her two biggest charges should be dismissed because of whispers and rumors started by jurors. You know, I just have a hard time believing that the jurors could not understand the jury form, didn't ask any questions, and represented that they were deadlocked on all three charges when they really weren't. I have a hard time believing that. So that's what I have for today. Please hit the thumbs up on your way out. Leave me a comment. I do read all my comments. I get so much out of them. Thank you. Please leave me a comment. Share this episode. It's the most important thing. Get the word out about Karen Reed and her innocence fraud campaign and innocence fraud in general. This channel cannot grow without the help of you. Support my work on Patreon. Buy me a coffee. Send the channel a donation via Venmo and cut out the middleman. I appreciate all my wonderful Patreon supporters and all your help in making these episodes possible. I will see you tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern, and I may see you at 9 o'clock Eastern on Kick Tonight. Look for me on Kick Tonight at 9 p.m. if you want to watch A Body in the Snow with me. Have a great night, everyone.
I hit my boyfriend with my car. It wasn't an accident, but with lying lawyers I'll go far. Lying lawyers and witness harassment, I'll avoid prison. It was snowing. I pushed the pedal down, hit him hard. Now the legal system a clown. Innocence fraud campaign to save my skin. Making money, truth is my second victim. Carry, Jen, like John, you were my mom. My innocence fraud campaign is my biggest hit yet. I hit my boyfriend with my car. It wasn't an accident, but with lying lawyers I'll go far. Lying lawyers and witness harassment, I'll avoid prison. It was snowing. I pushed the pedal down, hit him hard. Now the legal system, my clown.